Admiral Ju Park stood perfectly still on the bridge of the UEN Dauntless, her eyes fixed on the small blinking light on her console. The notification had appeared without warning during her regular shift. After checking it 3 times, she still couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. "Admiral, should I verify the signal again?" asked Lieutenant Dongo, his fingers hovering over his communications panel. "Yes. Run every authentication protocol we have," Park replied, keeping her voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline coursing through her body. The bridge crew worked in tense silence. The massive view screen showed only stars and the distant glow of the Arcturus system, where the Dauntless had been patrolling for the past month. Nothing in their sensor range suggested anything unusual was happening in this sector of space. Lieutenant Dongo looked up from his station, his expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Signal verified." "Admiral, it's genuine." Park nodded. "Put it on speakers. Everyone needs to hear this." The overhead speakers crackled to life, and an alien voice filled the bridge. The translation algorithms struggled to convert the complex harmonics of Ardelian speech into human language, giving the message an eerie, disjointed quality. "To any listening vessels, our colony on Epsilon Tauri IV is under assault by the Krell Dominion. They seek our extinction. Our defenses will not hold. Please, help us." The message repeated once more before fading into static. The bridge remained silent as the crew processed what they had just heard. "How old is this message?" Park asked. "Based on signal degradation, approximately 72 hours, replied Dongo. "It was broadcast on an old emergency frequency we haven't used in decades." Park walked slowly to the main tactical display. The Ardelians. After all this time. First Officer Taeyun joined her at the display. "Admiral, I should remind you that the Ardelian Confederation classified Earth as a death world over 200 years ago. They were among the first alien civilizations to make contact with us, and also the first to quarantine our solar system." "I'm well aware of our history, Commander," Park said, "but this changes things. The classification of Earth as a death world had been humanity's first real shock after achieving faster-than-light travel. The galactic community had taken one look at Earth's high gravity, unpredictable weather patterns, diverse biosphere full of predators, and the humans who had evolved to survive it all, and decided they wanted nothing to do with such dangerous beings. Humans were too strong, too resilient, too aggressive, products of an evolutionary pressure cooker that had forged them into something the rest of the galaxy found deeply unsettling. Diplomatic relations have been minimal and strained ever since. Bring up everything we have on Epsilon Tauri IV, Park ordered. The main display flickered, showing a small blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. Data scrolled alongside the image. Ardelian colony established approximately 50 years ago. Red Science Officer GI. Population estimated at 3 million. Gravity approximately 0.7 Earth standard. Atmosphere is oxygen-nitrogen mix, slightly thinner than Earth normal. And the Krell? Park asked. Reptilian species from a low-gravity world. Technologically advanced, highly territorial and expansionist. GI continued. They've been slowly pushing into Ardelian space for the past decade according to our limited intelligence. Park studied the display for a long moment. The Dauntless was the flagship of Earth's Third Fleet, a powerful battlecruiser designed for both exploration and combat. But alone, it couldn't provide the kind of help the Ardelians were requesting. "How long would it take us to reach Epsilon Tauri?" she asked. Navigator Sunwoo calculated quickly. "At maximum FTL, 5 days, Admiral." Park straightened her uniform and turned to face her crew. "Open a secure channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha." Within minutes, the stern face of Fleet Admiral Minho Kang appeared on the main view screen. Park explained the situation quickly and efficiently. "You're certain the signal is authentic?" Kang asked, his voice tight. "Yes, sir. We've verified it through multiple channels." Kang was silent for a moment. The Ardelians have ignored our diplomatic overtures for 2 centuries. Admiral Park. They've actively worked to keep humanity isolated from galactic affairs. With respect, sir, that doesn't matter now, Park replied. They've asked for help, and we're in a position to provide it. The Security Council will need to approve any military action beyond our established orders. Then I suggest you wake them up, sir, Park said, because while we debate, an entire colony might be wiped out. Kang's expression hardened, but there was a glint of approval in his eyes. Stand by for orders, Admiral. I'll have an answer for you within the hour. The transmission ended, and Park turned back to her crew. Prepare the ship for possible combat operations. I want all systems at full readiness. As the bridge crew sprang into action, Park moved to the viewport. The stars seemed suddenly cold and distant. Humanity had spent generations believing they were alone in their corner of the galaxy, shunned by more civilized species who feared their evolutionary heritage. Do you think they'll approve the mission? Taeyun asked quietly, joining her at the viewport. They have to, Park replied, not just for the Ardelians, but for us. This is the moment we've been waiting for. A chance to prove we're more than what they think we are. The next 45 minutes passed in tense preparation. Weapon systems were checked, engines tuned for maximum efficiency, and the medical bay prepared for possible casualties. Park reviewed tactical simulations of various engagement scenarios, trying to predict what they might face. When Admiral Kang's transmission finally came through, the entire bridge crew turned toward the main screen. Admiral Park, the Security Council has reached a decision, Kang announced. You are authorized to proceed to Epsilon Tauri IV and render all necessary assistance to the Ardelian colony. Park nodded. Thank you, sir. Furthermore, Kang continued, the Council has authorized the activation of the Deathworlder fleet. All available combat vessels are being recalled to Earth for immediate deployment. You will rendezvous with them at Epsilon Tauri. Park couldn't hide her surprise. The Deathworlder fleet was humanity's primary defensive force, named in ironic defiance of the label that had been forced upon them. It represented the bulk of Earth's military power. The full fleet, sir. The full fleet, Kang confirmed. If the galaxy wants to see what Deathworlders can do, we'll show them. His expression softened slightly. The Dauntless will arrive first. Hold the line until reinforcements arrive, Admiral. The transmission ended. Park turned to her bridge crew, who were watching her with expressions ranging from excitement to apprehension. Set course for Epsilon Tauri IV, maximum speed, she ordered. And send a message to the Ardelian colony. She paused, considering her words carefully. Tell them that help is coming. As the Dauntless's powerful engines engaged and the stars began to blur outside the viewport, Park returned to her command chair. The ship accelerated to faster-than-light speed, carrying humanity's response to a desperate plea for help. The Deathworlders were coming, and the galaxy was about to learn what that truly meant. The massive hangar bay of Luna Command buzzed with activity as thousands of military personnel rushed to prepare for deployment. Captain Hyun Kim watched from a catwalk as his Marines loaded equipment onto the assault carrier Thermopylae. The ship's name, taken from an ancient Earth battle where a small force had held off a much larger enemy, felt especially fitting today. Impressive, isn't it? A voice said beside him. Kim turned to see Commander Yunji, his executive officer, looking out at the organized chaos below. The entire fleet mobilized in less than 3 days, Kim replied. I've never seen anything like it. Below them, 37 warships were being prepared for combat. They ranged from nimble frigates to massive dreadnoughts, each representing the pinnacle of human military technology. The Thermopylae was among the largest, an assault carrier designed to bring troops and heavy equipment directly to a planetary surface. The Security Council is calling this Operation Sanctuary, Yunji said, handing Kim a data tablet. We'll be second wave, following Admiral Park and the Dauntless to Epsilon Tauri. Kim scrolled through the mission parameters, his expression growing more serious with each swipe. They're sending everything we have. Almost everything, Yunji corrected. The home fleet will remain in the Sol system. But yes, this is the largest deployment in UEN history. A group of Marines jogged past, carrying heavy equipment packs as if they weighed nothing. In Earth gravity, each pack would have weighed over 80 kilograms, but Luna's reduced gravity made the load manageable. Still, Kim knew his troops trained regularly in high-gravity conditions to maintain their strength and endurance. "We should check on the mech units," Kim said, pushing away from the railing. They took a transport lift down to the main hangar floor, where dozens of combat mechs were being loaded into the Thermopila's cargo base. The 12-meter-tall machines gleamed under the bright lights, their humanoid shapes imposing even when powered down. Sergeant Junho stood at a console, running diagnostics on the lid mech. He saluted as Kim approached. "Status report," Kim asked. "All 20 mechs are combat-ready, sir," Junho replied. "We've upgraded the hydraulics to function in variable gravity environments and installed the new thermal regulation systems." Kim nodded approvingly. "The Krell environment. Higher ambient temperature than we're used to, lower gravity, but nothing we can't handle," Junho said with confidence. "The pilots have been running simulations for the past 48 hours. A loud clang echoed through the hangar as a supply crate was dropped. Kim turned to see a group of new recruits rushing to pick it up. "First deployment?" he asked Unji quietly. She nodded. "Most of Bravo Company. They were scheduled to complete training next month, but now they'll get their education in the field," Kim finished. He walked over to the young Marines, who snapped to attention when they saw him. "At ease," he said. "What's your name, Marine?" "Private Minje, sir," the youngest-looking one replied, standing straighter. "First time off-world, Private Minje?" "Yes, sir. First time out of the training sims, too." Kim looked at the crate they'd been carrying, heavy armor designed to protect against energy weapons. "That equipment might save your life out there. Treat it with respect." "Yes, sir," Minje replied, swallowing hard. Kim softened his tone slightly. "The Krell don't know what they're in for. Remember your training. Follow your squad leaders, and you'll be fine." As Kim walked away, Yunji fell into step beside him. "They're so young." "We all were, once," Kim replied. "But they're stronger than they look. Every human is." They made their way to the ship's briefing room, where the company officers had gathered. The room fell silent as Kim entered. Maps and tactical displays covered the walls, showing the Epsilon Tauri system and what little intelligence they had on the Krell forces. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kim began, "in 6 hours we depart for our first combat mission against an alien species. I won't pretend we know exactly what we're facing. Our intelligence on the Krell is limited." He brought up an image of a Krell warrior. The alien was reptilian, with a lean body clearly evolved for a low-gravity environment. Its limbs were long and thin, its skin covered in scales that shimmered with an almost metallic quality. "What we do know is this. The Krell evolved on a world with 1/3 Earth's gravity. Their bodies are adapted for speed, not strength. Their technology is advanced, particularly their energy weapons and shield systems." Lieutenant Sujin raised her hand. "Sir, why would they attack the Ardelians? From what I understand, the Ardelians are peaceful. Territory, resources, old grudges, who knows?" Kim replied. "What matters is they attacked a civilian colony, and we're going to stop them." He switched the display to show the Ardelian colony on Epsilon Tauri IV. The colony is built mainly underground to shield from stellar radiation. Approximately 3 million civilians, minimal defensive capabilities. According to Admiral Park's latest transmission, the Krell have established orbital superiority and have landed ground forces. The officers studied the information with grim expressions. They all understood what was at stake. This wasn't just about saving the Ardelians. It was humanity's first major military action in interstellar space their first chance to show the galaxy what Earth was truly capable of. "The Dauntless will arrive 2 days before our fleet," Kim continued. "They'll do what they can to disrupt the Krell blockade, but they're outnumbered. Our job is to land, secure the colony, and push the Krell off-world." He looked around the room, meeting each officer's eyes. "The Ardelians and the Krell have one thing in common: they both think we're savages. The Ardelians feared us so much they helped quarantine our entire system. The Krell have never even encountered us in combat." Kim turned off the display. "Today we prove one of them right, and one of them wrong. We show the Ardelians that humans fight to protect, not to conquer. And we show the Krell exactly why Earth was classified as a death world." As the briefing continued, covering landing zones, communication protocols, and combat tactics, Kim felt a familiar calm settling over him. The kind of calm that came before action, born from years of training and preparation. 3 hours later, Kim stood on the bridge of the Thermopylae as the massive ship detached from Luna Command. Through the view screen, he could see the other vessels of the Deathworlder fleet taking position for the jump to FTL. Sleek destroyers, heavily armored cruisers, and support vessels moved with precision into a formation that would carry them across hundreds of light years. "All systems ready for FTL, Captain," reported the helmsman. "Fleet command signals ready for synchronized jump," added the communications officer. Kim took one last look at the Earth-Moon system glowing against the blackness of space. For centuries, humanity had been contained here, labeled as too dangerous to join galactic society. Now they were about to show the galaxy exactly what Deathworlders could do. "Begin jump sequence," he ordered. The stars outside the view screen stretched into lines as the Thermopylae's powerful engines engage. The Deathworlder fleet, 37 ships strong and carrying the finest soldiers Earth had produced, vanished into the depths of space, bound for a distant world and humanity's first interstellar war. As the blue swirl of FTL travel surrounded the ship, Kim thought about the message he'd give his troops before they landed. They needed to understand that today wasn't just about winning a battle, it was about defining humanity's place among the stars. The UEN Dauntless dropped out of FTL first, its massive engines flaring as it decelerated near the outer boundary of the Epsilon Tauri system. The rest of the human fleet followed seconds later, 37 warships appearing like ghosts against the backdrop of distant stars. Admiral Ju Park stood on the bridge, her hands clasped behind her back, as she took in the scene displayed on the main view screen. What she saw made her jaw tighten. Epsilon Tauri IV, a blue-green world that had once been home to a thriving Ardelian colony, was partially obscured by clouds of debris. Orbital habitats burned, their structures torn open to the vacuum of space. Broken ships and fragments of space stations formed a ring of destruction around the planet. "Status report," Park ordered, her voice calm despite the destruction before her. Tactical Officer Jin worked quickly at his station, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Sensors showed 23 Krell warships in orbit around the planet. Various classes, but the largest appears to be their command vessel. He highlighted a massive ship on the tactical display. "It's nearly twice the size of the Dauntless." "Life signs on the planet's surface?" Park asked. Science Officer Jihaik consulted her readings. "Difficult to get clear scans with all the atmospheric disturbance, but I'm detecting large concentrations of Ardelian life signs in the underground habitats. The colony's main defensive shields are still operational, but they're failing in several sectors. And the Krell ground forces, concentrated around the main shield generators, they appear to be trying to disable the colony's last defenses." Park nodded slightly. "At least we're not too late." She turned to Communications Officer Dongo. "Any sign that they've detected us?" "Not yet, Admiral. We're still at extreme range, and there's a lot of electromagnetic interference from the battle. But they'll spot us soon enough." The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, each person focused on their tasks despite the tension in the air. This was the moment they had trained for, the first direct confrontation between humans and an alien military force. The Krell ships are in a standard orbital blockade formation, Jin observed, studying the tactical display. But they're sloppy. Gaps in their coverage, minimal point defense systems active. They weren't expecting company. They've never even seen humans before, Jin added after a moment. The Ardelians kept all information about Earth classified after first contact. Admiral Park nodded. That's our advantage. She straightened her uniform and moved to the center of the bridge. Open a channel to the Krell flagship. Dong-ho looked up in surprise. Admiral, the rest of our fleet won't arrive for another 48 hours. Do you think it's wise to announce our presence? They're going to detect us any minute now, Park replied. I'd rather control the first impression. Channel open, Admiral, Dong-ho reported after a moment. The main view screen shifted to show the interior of the Krell command ship. The alien that appeared was very different from the simulation images they had studied. Its body was long and sinuous, covered in iridescent scales that shifted from green to purple depending on the light. 4 arms emerged from its torso, and its face was dominated by large compound eyes that reflected the light like black mirrors. The Krell commander's reaction to seeing humans was immediate and visible. Its head jerked back, and a ridge of scales along its neck flared outward in what the xenobiologists would later identify as an expression of surprise. This is Admiral Ju Park of the United Earth Navy, Park said clearly, keeping her posture straight and her expression neutral. You are attacking a civilian colony that has requested our assistance. Cease hostilities immediately and withdraw from this system. For several seconds, the Krell commander simply stared at her. When it finally spoke, its voice came through the translation system as a series of overlapping tones. Unknown species, this conflict does not concern you. The Ardelians are legitimate targets in our territorial expansion. Withdraw your vessels or be destroyed. Park's expression didn't change. I don't think you understand the situation. We are not asking permission. We are informing you that your attack on this colony ends now. The Krell commander's scales rippled in what might have been amusement. Your single vessel cannot oppose our fleet, unknown creature, even if your design is unusual. Its compound eyes seemed to study Park more closely. What manner of species are you? You are not listed in our database. We're humans, Park replied simply. From Earth. The Krell showed no recognition of the name. The information quarantine the Ardelians had placed on Earth had been more effective than anyone had realized. Your interference is unwelcome, humans. This is your final warning. Leave this system or be destroyed with the Ardelians. Park allowed herself a small smile. Before you make threats, you should know that this isn't our only ship. She nodded to Dong-ho, who adjusted the transmission to show the tactical display. The full human fleet was now visible, arranged in attack formation at the edge of the system. Our main battle group will arrive within 48 hours, Park continued. What you see now is just our advance force. I suggest you use this time to reconsider your position. The Krell commander's scales flattened against its body. Your ships are unknown configurations. We cannot assess their threat level. This changes nothing. Then perhaps a demonstration is in order, Park said. She cut the transmission and turned to her bridge crew. Battle stations. Prepare to engage the nearest Krell destroyer. Warning klaxons sounded throughout the Dauntless as the crew rushed to combat positions. The massive ship's engines flared as it accelerated toward the Krell blockade. The Krell destroyer has detected our approach, Jin reported. They're charging weapons. Evasive pattern Delta, Park ordered. Bring us within optimal firing range of their port side. The helmsman executed the maneuver perfectly, sending the Dauntless into a spiraling approach that would have crushed an unprepared crew under the T-forces. But the humans aboard had trained their entire lives in Earth's punishing gravity. Their bodies could withstand pressures that would kill most species in the galaxy. The Krell ship is firing, Jin announced calmly. Energy beams lanced out from the alien vessel, cutting through space where the Dauntless had been moments before. But the human ship had already changed course, its maneuverability defying the expectations of the Krell gunners. "Target locked," Jin reported. "Kinetic cannons ready. Fire," Park ordered. The Dauntless's main guns roared to life, launching hyper-accelerated tungsten projectiles at a fraction of light speed. The Krell ship's shields flared briefly before collapsing under the impact. The projectiles tore through the alien vessel's hull, sending it spinning out of control. "Direct hit," Jin confirmed. "The Krell destroyer is disabled, Admiral." Park nodded. "Open a channel to all Krell vessels." When the communication system connected, Park addressed the alien fleet. "That was one ship against one ship. We have 37 vessels in total, and our main battle group includes ships 3 times the size of the Dauntless. You have 48 hours to withdraw from this system peacefully." She ended the transmission and turned to her crew. "Now we see how they respond." The answer came 5 minutes later as 12 Krell warships broke formation and accelerated toward the Dauntless. "It seems they need further convincing," Park said quietly. "All hands, prepare for combat. Deploy fighter squadrons. Let's show them exactly what humans can do." As the first wave of human fighters launched from the Dauntless's bay, Park knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when they faced the full might of the Krell fleet. But for now, they had a chance to make a statement, to show the galaxy that the Deathworlders of Earth were a force to be reckoned with. And as the battle began in earnest, the distress call that had brought them here echoed in her mind. For the first time in centuries, humanity had been asked for help. Park was determined to prove they had made the right call. Specialist Do-Eun Lee crouched in the boarding pod with 5 other Marines, feeling the vibrations as the small craft accelerated toward the Krell flagship. Through the tiny viewport, he could see the massive alien vessel growing larger by the second. Its purple-black hull was covered in strange geometric patterns that seemed to shift and change as he watched. 30 seconds to impact," announced the pod's AI in a calm voice. Lee checked his assault rifle one last time. The weapon was heavy and solid in his hands, designed for Earth gravity. In the low-gravity environment of the Krell ship, it would feel nearly weightless. "Remember," Sergeant Junho said to the squad, "their internal gravity is set to 0.4 Earth standard. You'll feel like you can fly. Don't get carried away." The Marines nodded. They had trained for low-gravity combat, but training simulations were one thing. Real combat was another. 10 seconds, said the AI. Lee braced himself against the padded wall of the pod. Next to him, Private Minje was taking deep, controlled breaths, his hands tight around his weapon. "First combat drop?" Lee asked quietly. Minje nodded. "Yes, sir." "Stay close to me. We'll be fine." The impact came with a jarring thud. Cutting lasers automatically activated, slicing through the Krell ship's hull. The pod's door blew outward, and Lee was the first one through the opening. He landed in a wide corridor with high ceilings and strangely angled walls. The lower gravity hit him immediately, making his first step too high and too far. But his training kicked in, and he adjusted his movements, planting his feet firmly to avoid bouncing. "Clear left," he called. "Clear right," responded Corporal Jisu. The rest of the squad emerged from the pod, forming a defensive perimeter. The corridor was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft hum of the ship's systems. "Movement ahead," Junho whispered into the comm. 50 meters, coming our way." Lee raised his rifle, the targeting system in his helmet automatically compensating for the difference in gravity. Around the corner came 3 Krell soldiers, their scaled bodies gleaming under the ship's lights. They carried energy weapons that glowed with an ominous blue light. The Krell spotted the humans immediately. One of them made a high-pitched trilling sound that the translation software in Lee's helmet interpreted as an alarm call. They raised their weapons and fired. Energy bolts streaked toward the human squad, but the Marines were already moving. In the light gravity, their Earth-trained muscles launched them into incredible leaps and dives. Lee jumped nearly 3 meters straight up, his rifle spitting armor-piercing rounds as he soared over the Krull position. The aliens seemed shocked by the human speed and agility. Their shots went wide, hitting walls and ceiling. Lee landed behind them and fired again, his bullets punching through the Krull's light armor with ease. "They're down," Lee reported. "Move up." The squad advanced through the corridor, encountering more Krull soldiers as they went. Each firefight ended the same way, the humans using the low gravity to perform maneuvers that seemed impossible to the aliens, while their heavier weapons overcame the Krull's defenses. "Control room should be 2 levels up," Junho said, consulting the ship schematic on his wrist display. "We need to take the central lift." They found the lift, a large circular platform ringed with control panels. Lee stepped onto it, feeling the subtle vibration beneath his feet. "How do we operate it?" Minjae asked, studying the alien controls. Jisoo pulled a small device from her belt. "Universal interface. Should bypass their security." Before she could use it, the lift activated on its own, rising rapidly through the ship. The squad formed a defensive circle, weapons ready. "Someone's bringing us up to them," Junho said grimly. When the lift stopped, they found themselves in a vast chamber filled with workstations. Dozens of Krull looked up in alarm as the human squad appeared. At the center of the room stood a larger Krull, its scales more vibrant and decorated with metallic ornaments. "The commander," Lee whispered. The Krull commander made a gesture, and its soldiers raised their weapons. But they hesitated, clearly unnerved by these strange beings who had somehow breached their flagship. Lee didn't wait for them to recover. He launched himself across the room in a single bound that would have been impossible in Earth gravity. His armor, designed to protect against Earth's crushing pressure, made the energy weapon's impacts feel like gentle taps. The other Marines followed, spreading out across the control room in a carefully rehearsed assault pattern. Their movements were fluid and impossibly fast in the low gravity, making them seem more like supernatural beings than soldiers. The Krull fought back, but they were unprepared for close combat with creatures evolved on a high-gravity world. When a Krull soldier swung at Lee, he caught the alien's arm easily. The difference in strength was shocking. Lee's muscles, developed to work against Earth's punishing gravity, overpowered the alien with minimal effort. "Secure the command consoles," Junho ordered as the last Krull soldier fell. Lee approached the commander, who backed away, its compound eyes reflecting Lee's armored form. The translation software picked up its rapid speech. "What are you? No species moves like that. No species should be this strong." "We're humans," Lee replied simply. "From Earth." The confusion in the alien's posture was clear. It had never heard of Earth, never been warned about the Deathworlders who called it home. Outside the viewport, Lee could see the space battle unfolding. Human fighters danced around the larger Krull vessels, performing maneuvers that defied the aliens' understanding of what was physically possible. The pilots inside those fighters were withstanding forces that would have crushed most galactic species, their bodies conditioned by a lifetime on Earth. The Dauntless itself was at the center of the action, its advanced engines allowing it to change direction with impossible speed. 3 Krull cruisers were already disabled, drifting helplessly as human boarding parties, like Lee's, secured them one by one. "Consoles secured," Jisoo reported. "I've accessed their command systems. We control the flagship." Junho nodded and activated his comlink. "Admiral Park, this is Sergeant Junho. Krull flagship is under our control." "Excellent work, Sergeant," came Park's reply. "Have you encountered significant resistance?" "Negative, Admiral. They weren't ready for us." On the other side of the system, the main force of the Deathworlder fleet was arriving, dropping out of FTL in perfect formation. The remaining Krull ships began to retreat, breaking orbit around Epsilon Tauri IV and accelerating toward the outer system. Lee watched through the viewport as Captain Kim's assault carrier, the Thermopylae, moved into position above the planet. Landing craft were already descending toward the surface, carrying reinforcements to secure the Ardelian colony. "What's the status of the colony?" Lee asked. Jisoo checked the console. "Shields holding, but barely. The Krell were hours away from breaking through when we arrived." The Krell commander had been watching the battle unfold with what seemed like disbelief. Now it spoke again, its voice translated into Lee's earpiece. "Our intelligence said nothing of your kind. How is this possible?" Lee looked at the alien. "Your intelligence came from the Ardelians, right? They've kept information about Earth restricted for centuries. Why would they hide knowledge of such a species?" The Krell's confusion was evident. Lee smiled slightly behind his visor. "Because they're afraid of us." As the last of the Krell fleet retreated from the system, Lee looked out at the stars. For centuries, humanity had been isolated, labeled as too dangerous to join galactic society. But today, those same qualities that had made them feared, their strength, their endurance, their ability to survive, had saved an entire colony. The irony wasn't lost on him. The galaxy had called them Deathworlders, had treated them as savages too dangerous to associate with. Yet when danger threatened, it was those same Deathworlders they called for help. "All boarding teams, report to extraction points," came the order over the comm. "Prepare to secure prisoners for transport." As Lee's squad led the captured Krell commander toward the boarding pod, he couldn't help but think that today marked a turning point. The galaxy was about to learn that the Deathworlders of Earth were more than just strong bodies from a harsh world. They were protectors, defenders, and after today, no one would forget it. The grand conference room aboard the UN Dauntless had been specially modified for this historic meeting. The gravity was set to a compromise level that most species could tolerate, the temperature adjusted to a neutral range, and atmospheric processors worked overtime to create a breathable mix for vastly different biological needs. Admiral Ju Park stood at the entrance, watching as the alien representatives filed in. 27 different species, each with their own distinctive appearance and movement patterns. Some floated on anti-gravity platforms, others walked on multiple legs, and a few moved in ways that defied easy description. "Quite the gathering," said Commander Minji, who stood beside Park. "Half of them have never even seen a human in person before today." Park nodded, and the other half preferred to keep it that way. The Ardelian ambassador approached them, its four-armed body moving with a grace that belied its advanced age. The translator pinned to its chest converted its melodic speech into human language. "Admiral Park, words cannot express our gratitude for what your people have done," the ambassador said. "Without your intervention, our colony would have been destroyed." Park inclined her head slightly. "We responded to your distress call. Anyone would have done the same." The ambassador's large eyes blinked in what might have been amusement. "No, Admiral, not anyone. In fact, before your arrival, we sent distress calls to 17 different civilizations. You were the only ones who came." This information wasn't new to Park. Intelligence had intercepted many of those unanswered calls, but hearing it confirmed still stirred something inside her. "Perhaps after today, that will change," she said simply. The last of the delegates took their places around the large circular table. At one end sat the Krell Prime Minister, its scales dulled with what xenobiologists identified as an expression of defeat and shame. The once mighty Krell Dominion had been humbled in less than a week by a species they hadn't even known existed. Park took her position at the head of the table. The room fell silent as she prepared to speak. "Representatives of the galactic community," she began, her voice carrying easily across the room. "1 week ago, the United Earth Navy responded to a distress call from the Ardelian colony on Epsilon Tauri IV. We found it under attack by Krell forces engaged in what they termed territorial expansion, but what was, in reality, an attempt at genocide." She paused, letting her gaze move around the table. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. "The Krell fleet has been neutralized. Their ground forces have surrendered. The colony is safe and reconstruction efforts are already underway. The Krell Prime Minister spoke, its translated voice carrying a note of bitterness. The humans employed tactics and physical abilities that were unexpected. Our intelligence contained no warning of their capabilities. And whose fault is that? Countered a delegate from the Vesperian Collective, a species of insectoid aliens known for their bluntness. The Ardelians have kept Earth under an information quarantine for centuries, denying us all valuable knowledge. The Ardelian ambassador's skin flushed a deep blue. We feared them. Can you blame us? Their world is a death world. Park interrupted. Yes, we're aware of the classification. For centuries, you've used that term to justify keeping us isolated, to deny us full participation in galactic affairs. Her voice remained calm, but there was steel beneath it. For centuries, you classified Earth as a death world. You feared us because our planet made us strong. Today, that strength saved one of your civilizations from extinction. A murmur ran through the assembled delegates. The Ardelian ambassador's color deepened further. We may have been hasty in our judgment, it admitted. Hasty. The word came from Captain Hyun Kim, who stood at Park's side. Your judgment condemned my people to centuries of isolation. We were treated as savages too dangerous to associate with, while civilizations like the Krell were free to build warships and threaten their neighbors. The Krell Prime Minister's scales flattened against its body. The humans speak with the arrogance of victory. But let me remind this assembly that they have revealed themselves as the most dangerous species in known space. Their physical capabilities alone are the result of evolving on a high-gravity world with a diverse ecosystem. Park cut in. Nothing more, nothing less. We didn't choose to be strong, or fast, or resilient. We simply adapted to our environment, as all life does. She touched a control, and a hologram appeared in the center of the table, the image of Earth, blue and green and beautiful despite its harsh reputation. This is our home. Yes, it's a world of storms and earthquakes, of predators and disease, but it's also a world of breathtaking beauty and diversity. It made us what we are: survivors, explorers, protectors. Park's voice softened slightly. Not conquerors. The Vesperian delegate's antennae quivered. Yet your military capabilities were developed for our own defense, Park replied. And as we just demonstrated, for the defense of others when called upon. The room fell silent as the delegates processed her words. Park could see the calculation happening behind alien eyes, the reassessment of humanity's place in the galactic order, the recognition of a new power that could not be ignored or contained any longer. Finally, the eldest of the Ardelian representatives stood. Admiral Park speaks truth. For too long, we have let fear guide our policies toward Earth. We classified them as Deathworlders and convinced ourselves this justified their isolation. The elder's four hands performed a complex gesture of contrition. Today, I formally propose the immediate end to all information quarantines regarding Earth and the full integration of humanity into galactic affairs. The proposal sent another ripple of reaction through the room. Some delegates nodded in agreement, others buzzed or clicked in what might have been concern. The Krell Dominion objects, stated their Prime Minister. The humans are too dangerous to be given free access to galactic technology and resources. Park smiled slightly. With respect, Prime Minister, you're in no position to object to anything. Your fleet has been destroyed, your ground forces captured, and your government has signed an unconditional surrender. She let that sink in before continuing. But let me be clear about one thing. Humanity has no interest in conquest or domination. We want peaceful exchange, fair trade, and mutual defense. She looked around the table again. What we will no longer accept is exclusion based on outdated fears and prejudices. The meeting continued for hours as treaties were proposed, terms negotiated, and a new framework for humanity's relationship with the galaxy began to take shape. Throughout it all, Park maintained her composure, neither yielding on essential points nor pressing too hard where flexibility was possible. As the delegates finally began to disperse, many approached Park personally, some curious, others cautious, a few openly admiring. The Ardelian colony governor, who had joined via holographic projection, thanked her with words that brought unexpected emotion to her throat. "My children will grow up knowing that when darkness came, the humans of Earth were the light that saved us." Later, as the conference room emptied, Park stood at the viewport, looking out at the stars. Commander Minji approached, data tablet in hand. "The news is spreading across the galaxy," Minji said. "They're already calling us the Guardians of the Galaxy. Bit dramatic, don't you think?" Park smiled slightly. "Perhaps, but if it helps them see us as protectors rather than threats, I won't object." "And the Krell?" Minji asked. "They'll honor the peace treaty. They have no choice. But more importantly, they'll spread the word about what happened here. No one will underestimate humanity again." Minji followed Park's gaze to the stars. "What happens now?" Park thought about Earth, the beautiful, dangerous world that had forged humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before. A world of storms and sunshine, of crushing depths and soaring heights, of creatures that could kill and landscapes that could heal. "Now we show them what Deathworlders can really do," she said quietly. "Not just in battle, but in peace. Not just as warriors, but as explorers, diplomats, scientists, artists." She turned to face Minji. "We show them that the same strength that makes us dangerous also makes us kind. The same adaptability that helps us survive also helps us understand others." Beyond the viewport, Epsilon Tauri IV turned slowly, its surface already showing signs of recovery. Human ships worked alongside Ardelian vessels in the reconstruction efforts, the first tangible example of cooperation between their species. "For centuries, they've defined us by the world that shaped us," Park said. "It's time we showed them that being Deathworlders never limited who we could become. It only gave us the strength to reach for something more." As night fell across the Ardelian colony below, lights began to appear on the surface. Not the fires of destruction, but the warm glow of homes being rebuilt, of life continuing. And among those lights moved the silhouettes of human soldiers, no longer fighting, but helping to repair what had been broken. The SOS that had triggered humanity's Deathworlder fleet to action had done more than save a single colony. It had opened the door to a new era, not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy.